Hi, and welcome back to my channel. I am Hanan. Today we're going to discuss part 2 of how to surf skate. In part 1, we discussed placement of feet, push, and posture. We're going to do a little review of those things, but I highly recommend that if you haven't seen part 1, to go back and check that out. Today we're going to be discussing how to turn, how to slow down, and how to stop. In part 3, we will be discussing how to pump. But for now, let's tackle those two things. To summarize what we talked about last time, first is posture. Your core should be slightly engaged, your knees should be slightly bent, and nice and loose so that you can kind of take on whatever comes to you as far as your terrain. The second thing is the placement of your feet. You want to make sure that your foot is directly behind the second pair of bindings and that it is facing directly forward. You want to make sure that the majority of your weight is on that front foot, and then you're going to just pop your foot on there and get going. One thing to keep in mind is when you're popping that back foot on the board, make sure that it is not too far back because that will allow you to slip out, and you don't want to do that. So make sure that your foot is in that little pocket right there or slightly forward right here. The third thing we discussed in part 1 is to make sure to have a good push. In order to do that, you want to push off with the very tip of your foot, and you want to do it very lightly, not putting too much weight on that. You still want the majority of your weight to be on that front foot. So I'm going to show you what that looks like. All of my weight is on my front foot, and as I give it a little gentle push, I put my foot in the pocket. The next step after pushing off and being able to go straight is fixing the stance of your feet. Once you push off and you feel confident that you don't need to push off again, you're going to change your feet from this directly forward position to slightly angled. So this is what that looks like. I have my foot behind the second set of bindings. I push off, and now that I don't need to push off again, I've slightly altered my feet to that 75% angle. Now let's talk about turning. When it comes to turning, there are two main components you should think about. The first being your shoulder, and this one might be the most important one. Wherever your leading shoulder is pointing is where you are going to go. For example, if you are a goofy foot like me, meaning that your front foot is going to be your right foot, that means your right shoulder is going to be your leading shoulder. If I begin to turn my leading shoulder over to the right, my body weight is going to kind of push me over to the right. If I turn my leading shoulder to the left, then I will be moving to the left. And it's just as simple as that. The second thing you need to think about is your knees. Make sure that your knees are pretty bent. The more bent they are, the more you're committing to that turn. So now I'm going to show you what that looks like on the board. Remember that once you get on the board and you're done pushing, your front foot is no longer going to be straight. It's going to be slightly angled like that. Okay? So I got on my board, I pushed, and now I'm moving, and my foot is kind of, I wouldn't say quite perpendicular to the front, but just kind of angled like that. So this is my foot and this is the board. And my back foot is going to be in that pocket. And then I want to begin turning to the right. So this is what a good stance looks like. My foot is slightly bent a little bit more in the back and bent in the front, and my core is engaged, and then I begin that turn. The best way to begin a turn is to use your arms. I know it looks a little funny and a little bit ridiculous, but you kind of want to look like a surfer on a wave. You want to go ahead and really commit to that turn. So let's say that I want to go forward and just go straight. I'm going to look like this. My shoulder is directly aligned with the front of the board, and I'm going to go straight this way. But if I want to begin moving over to the right, notice that my shoulder is now facing the right. So it looks like that. Now if I want to move over to the left, I'm going to rotate my body like that. And now I'm going to be moving to the left. And this is what that looks like. Okay, first things first, I'm going to give myself a good push. Then I'm going to adjust my feet. Then I'm going to turn my right shoulder over. And then I'm going to turn my left shoulder over. Back to my right. And notice how my knees are bent. Now let's discuss stopping. There are 4 main ways to stop. The first, running off your board. The second, dragging your foot on the ground. The third, using that turn to your advantage to kind of angle it uphill and allow you to slow down. Fourth, power sliding. Today we'll only be discussing the first 3 because the 4th one, power slides, are a little bit more advanced, and we'll discuss that at a later video. If you're not going too fast and the only way you know how to stop is to jump off, this is the most protective way to do it. Try to match the speed that you're going with your board, and then start running rather than just jumping off. So it looks something like this. So I got on my board, and the way I'm gonna stop is run off. I'm just gonna hop off and give it a little bit of a run. And there we go. Got off safely, even though I don't know how to drag my feet. When it comes to dragging your foot on the ground, you can still have your foot at that slightly angled position, or you can have it straight. I like to adjust my foot in the straight position before putting my foot down for a drag. One thing that is super important to consider, when you are dragging your foot, you want to use your heel, something like this, or your toe. You don't want to put the whole foot down because it could cause you to get stuck and fall over. So I like to do it with my heel. So it will look something like this, and I'm just kind of dragging my foot as I'm going. The majority of my weight is still on that front foot. However, there's just a little bit of weight dragging and slowing me down. And this is what that looks like. Okay, so I'm gonna give myself a little bit of a push. I've angled my foot, I put it back, and then I give it a drag. Just like that. So now we're gonna talk a little bit about how to slow down when you're doing those turns. Earlier, I mentioned that you should go uphill when you are turning. What I mean by that is that when you are beginning to make that turn, rather than making that S turn and keeping it kind of horizontal, you're making a bit of a U, and then you go down and another U, and then you go down and another U. The reason for that is it's the opposite of gravity. If you're going back up the hill, you're gonna begin to slow down. I'm gonna show you what that looks like. You don't need to hear me talk any longer. So notice that when I'm turning back up the hill. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch my video today. I hope you learned something and you're really getting those turns down. If you have any questions about any of the techniques, make sure to leave them down below in the comment section. And if you like this video, please go ahead and leave a like down below. Thank you so much, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!